Well, howdy. This is Austin Awkward, and I'm Adam. When I moved out to Spokane from Richmond, Virginia, I packed up everything in my truck and took off with my dad on a pretty epic road trip. Along the way, we had a lot of fun, and one of the things we did was we tried to hit as many states as possible. When we were coming out of South Dakota, we figured we better make a short detour here into Wyoming, because when else are we going to go to Wyoming? And so that's what we did. And this put us on a collision course with Broadus, Montana, the wavingest city in the West, as they like to say, which is in southeastern Montana. And as we were just about 2 miles out from Broadus, Montana, the truck breaks down. Water hose breaks. We're in southeastern Montana, so there's not much around, but we're fortunate to be near a driveway. And so we pull into the top of a gravel driveway and turn the vehicle off, open the hood. A few moments later, a young fella comes out from that house and starts walking up the driveway. We do the whole, hey, yeah, broken down, yeah, take a look at it, poke it, we're going to need to call tow truck thing. And I pull my phone out, and this being southeastern Montana, you can probably guess what happens next. That's right, not a lick of reception. So I say, I have no reception. He says, not a problem. And we start heading down the driveway to use the phone in his house, which I suppose is a necessity in southeastern Montana. You need to have a phone, a hard line there, because who knows when you'll get cell phone reception, right? Anyway, on the way down, I realized I'm being quite rude as I'm heading towards this gentleman's house, and I decided I should probably introduce myself. I say, oh, I'm so sorry. My name's Adam. And he finishes that by saying, Austin, right? Yeah, Adam Austin. How did you know that? Now, my name is literally on the license plate of my truck. My first name is. So it's not a surprise if someone knows that I'm Adam. But Austin, that's more than a guess, I would think. And he says, oh, yeah, I ran your plates when you guys pulled over. I said, what? It turns out that this gentleman, Troy was his name, is actually an agent for the Bureau of Land Management. And now this is kind of an awkward situation. Fortunately, the rest of the story goes that we get the tow truck, we go to Broadus, we end up spending a night in lovely Broadus, Montana, and we get to head out the next day, no problems. And I didn't really think too much of it. It's an anecdote I sometimes bring up when I try to tell people that everyone out west is a cowboy, and it's crazy. But I didn't think too much of it until the Eastern Oregon, the standoff with the occupiers and the federal government occurred down there. And I said to myself, man, if the folks who are the federal agents, the law enforcement agents, are the kind of paranoid, rugged individuals who will run the license plates of a stranded motorist before they offer any assistance, I can only assume that the kind of people who aren't law enforcement officials but are still those rugged individuals living in those same places, they might be a unique type, especially unique to someone like myself who's lived all of his life in urban or suburban environments and never had the opportunity to live in a place where you're literally hundreds of miles away from any significant civilization and your neighbor is at least a half dozen miles away, if not more. And so I thought it was very interesting as I started watching the coverage of this, because as I was made aware of my bias, my ignorance of who it is who lives out here in this part of the country and what they're like, and I was made aware of that. But a lot of the folks who were covering it seemed to be covering it completely unaware that they too were ignorant, and their ignorance was causing them a bias. Now, would they be wrong in their assertions that the people who are occupying the federal buildings are wrong? No, that doesn't really change the facts of the story, but it does color it in a different way, right? Puts a different spin on it when you know the type of human beings who live out here, the type of human beings who still wear cowboy hats and boots and carry firearms on their hips everywhere they go and drive big pickup trucks, and they're the kind of individuals who like being hundreds of miles away from anyone else and who like having the solitude to raise cattle the way they feel they should. And if you don't know that, if you're missing that experience, when you tell the story, you get it wrong, at least a little bit wrong. And that's something we're seeing happening over and over again in our culture today. We see it happening with the Black Lives Matter. We see it happening with the refugee crisis, the immigrant crisis. Over and over again, when we make assumptions and we decide to make our kind of to come up with our conclusions about a situation, we do so without ever having conceived of the fact that there's another side of the story. And that ignorance leads us to be biased. Most of the time, that bias isn't dangerous, but sometimes it can be. Sometimes it leads us to say really awful things, Mr. Trump, I'm looking at you, buddy, about people because we're ignorant of who they are and what they're all about. So my hope is in this new year that I'll spend more time trying to get both sides of the story. Does it mean I'm going to change my opinions about things? No, probably not. Most of the time, I'll probably have the same opinion, but at least I'll have a fuller opinion, and I can have a clear conscience when I make a decision that involves the most information possible. Obviously, my hope would be not that I do this alone, but that everybody starts doing this. And I think there are more people who are conscious of this. And I think that as people start demanding that kind of integrity amongst the individuals who we consider to be the media, I think we can see, you'll see a difference in the way we cover things. And I think people like a Donald Trump or a Glenn Beck will not be allowed to spew hatred and that prey on the fears that the ignorance of others creates. So that's my hope. I don't know if it's going to become true. I don't know if maybe that's just me being a bit too optimistic, a bit too utopian, but that's what I'm pushing for. And I hope you'll push for it with me as well. Thank you so much for spending time with me. I'll see you next time.